first thing we're going to do for our dress is we are going to sew a French seam. So to do that, you want to put wrong sides together on the side seams and stitch them up with a small seam allowance. Once you sew along here, wrong sides together, and we're going to press it flat. And flip it to the other side, so it's right sides together, and press our seam. So we're making a French seam. And the idea of the French seam is that your raw edges get caught on the inside. So I'm going to do my French seam, and so again, this is right sides together here, and I can feel my seam allowance here with my fingers. So I just want to sew to the other side of that so it catches the seam allowance in the seam. So it should look like that. So a gathering stitch along this edge with a long stitch length. Now that we've got our gathers and our bottom ruffle, we are going to French seam them together. So again, for the French seam, we put our project wrong sides together. And you want to make sure as well that you don't want to sew your gathering stitch into your French seam. If you do, something on the world. But okay, so pin that wrong sides together. Now we're going to sew that with a small seam allowance and flip it over to the other side and sew it again to make our French seam. So now that we've sewn along the edge of our ruffle, wrong sides together, remember we're just going to give it a quick press, flip it around, press it again, and sew it down so that the raw edges are trapped inside the seam. So once your ruffle is sewn, we're going to French seam it to the bodice. And again, for the French seam, we're going to put it wrong sides together. And I'm matching up my side seams and giving that a pin. Okay, and then we are going to gather. So just gather that up, pin in place, and sew around with a small stitch length, and we'll French seam this as well. So now we're ready to do the bodice lining. So we're going to pin this together wrong sides to wrong sides and do another French seam like before. So sew with a small seam allowance, flip it over and sew it again. Once you have your French seam done on the bodice lining, we're just going to do a little double turn roll hem all the way around. So just going to pin that. And just now we're going to do the straps. So we have two straps. We're going to take them and fold them in half lengthwise, and you're going to sew along the edge, and then we're going to flip it and make it just a little spaghetti strap. So that we've sewn our channel, we're going to put our loop turner through, and we're going to hook the end Sometimes it takes a second, and then you just pull it through. After we've done our lining, I'm going to go back to the main bodice, and we are going to put a gathering stitch along the top, on the front, and the back. So then once you've done the strap and given it a press, we're ready to pin it onto the bodice. So you want to put the first strap over at the front. And I'm just going to put it around this side. So we're going to put our lining on, and we need this to not be in the way of the lining. Just make sure that it's not twisted over here. So once we've got our straps sewn on, so you can see that there it is there. So now I've taken my lining and I'm pinning it on right side to right side. So I'm matching it up here on the side seam and up at the top here. And I'm going to gather this up so that it matches the lining. Now that I've gone and sewn that all around, we can flip it inside out. We'll have quite a few threads to clean up, that's okay. Flip it right side out. Okay, so we'll need to give that a good press, but that's gonna look pretty good. Okay, and you got your straps, and they didn't get caught or twisted. So that's good. And now we are going to do the hem. At the bottoms, we're just going to do a standard double turn hem, okay? Just like we did on the lining of the bodice, just turn it twice and give it a stitch.